Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at Jupiter's upcoming square to Saturn, and I'm going to talk about the archetypal combination of Jupiter and Saturn, what you can expect from the square. But more importantly, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks for tracking the historic cycles of Jupiter and Saturn so that you can go from maybe a kind of vague understanding of the transit to a much more in-depth and personal experience of the transit, because this is one of those transits that has a very large historic arc. The synodic cycle of Jupiter and Saturn is something that, when they come around to their conjunctions and their squares, it really helps to understand the history of the entire cycle, and how each part of the cycle is building on a previous part of the cycle. So we're going to give you some tips and tricks for tracking the historic cycles of Jupiter and Saturn in your own life. I'm going to go back through the entire last cycle of Jupiter and Saturn under the dates of the major aspects, and give you some prompts and ideas for how you might go back in time under these periods and track out the development, which can then help you understand this upcoming square, which is the first square of a new cycle that started in 2020. So hopefully people will find that this is really useful. I find that when you're tracking big historical cycles like this, it really helps to have a little bit of guidance so that you can understand that what's happening now is really a part of a larger and longer process and story reflected by the entirety of the cycle. And a lot of us, we don't know how to track that. We need a little help. So I'm going to hopefully provide us with that today. Anyway, before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. Really helps us grow the channel. Thank you so much to everybody who's helped us grow the channel over the past months. It's been awesome to see. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on my website, which is nightlightastrology.com. Of course, right now, we are in the midst of Kickstarter season. So between now and the end of the year, we are trying to rally the support of 1,937 backers to support the channel and the ongoing development of free content 5 days a week, year round. When you support the channel, of course, you're supporting me, and this is part of how I earn my living and take care of my family. It's also a part of how we provide for a whole staff of people and need-based offerings on all of our classes, all of our programs, as well as need-based donation clinic. So many things that you guys have helped us build. We always try to give back and put back into the community to make astrology accessible for people. And so when you support us, I think you're supporting something really great. You can go over to the Kickstarter and donate by visiting the link in the comments section in the description of the video, or you can go over to nightlightastrology.com and click on the 2025 Kickstarter link at the top of the page. When you go over to the Kickstarter, you'll scroll down and you're going to see a variety of rewards that you can get when you donate. At the end of today's video, I will be breaking down all of the individual rewards that we offer, my new book, Astrology of the Year Ahead talk that I do, year ahead horoscope readings you can pick up. These are things that I do not release anywhere else. They're sort of exclusive content through the Kickstarter. Of course, we have 50% off on all of the programs that we have. And if you bundle classes together, it goes up to almost 75% off. So some really, really great deals. And a big thanks to everyone who's already pitched in. We really appreciate it. We can't do this work without you. And every day I like to say a little something about what I think makes this content in this channel valuable, what makes it worth investing in. And one of the things that I believe is a part of what so many people I think appreciate about the channel, that is a very deliberate part of how I create content, is an emphasis on animism. You might broadly say that animism is a view that looks at the cosmos as a living being, that there is not animism is all about looking, for example, at the planets and seeing them as people, seeing the planets and the archetypes themselves as gods and goddesses that can be related to on your altar in prayer. That when we see astrological transits unfolding, we're not just thinking of like abstract mechanisms, that we're thinking about living beings, spirits, presences. That the way that I present astrology is going to always be encouraging of a living, relational, participatory connection with a cosmos that is essentially a living being. That is an incredibly important part of how I create content and the way in which I share astrology. And so if that is a value to you, and you know that that's going to be a value that we cook into the content every single day, and it's a value that we believe is worth sort of, being passionate about. So anyway, you'll find that that's here on the channel day in and day out. And on that note, thank you again to everybody for contributing. Find the link to the Kickstarter in the description of the video, in the comments section. or on the website, nightlightastrology.com. Okay, so let us take a look now at this big Jupiter-Saturn moment. Now, I've talked about the Jupiter-Saturn dynamic a number of times, and I have some journal and tracking prompts that I want to work with you on today, as well as looking back at all of the major pieces of the last Jupiter-Saturn cycle, which can then help us track the current cycle. So I think this will be really useful because you can go back in time and really look at the entirety of the last cycle. If you were alive for all of it, of course, there's maybe some younger people here who weren't, but a lot of the people probably will have been around for most of the last cycle. And I think that this is one of the most valuable things we can do, because when you listen to daily content, a lot of the times what we're looking for is information about what's happening in a very immediate sense. Like, how's this week going to go? What's in the sky today? Oh, look at that Venus-Pluto dynamic. Wow, that was gnarly, like that. Then there comes major, like, epoch-shifting planetary changes, like Pluto into Aquarius, Neptune into Aries, Saturn changing signs into Pisces a couple of years ago. When these kinds of things happen, we can't offer you on this, today will somehow encapsulate all of the symbolism that, Saturn and Pisces has to offer. No, it's going to take several years. And learning to track the development of a planet that is working in and through the psyche over multiple years, or that is part of a great cyclical dynamic like the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, it takes a different kind of tracking. And for most of us who consume content sort of passively, like we're listening to it in the car, we're listening to it, while we work out or whatever, we can easily kind of miss how powerful and relevant the bigger, longer, slower movements are, because we're tuning in a little bit more like, checking the weather app on your phone, which is totally fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think that we miss just how powerful some of this tracking can be, because no one gives us the tools to track it. And because we're listening in a passive way as life's just flowing along, it's like harder to slow down and do the work to track a longer, bigger cycle. So I'm going to give you some tips for how you can make that easy today, hopefully, and some specific dates to look back on in the last cycle. And if you can sit down for even 10, 15 minutes to do the kind of tracking that I suggest, I think that you will get so much more out of the tracking of this upcoming Jupiter-Saturn square. So let's just start by remembering that the Jupiter-Saturn dynamic is so much more than what people think. For example, one of the common ways that people talk about Jupiter-Saturn is say Jupiter is expansion and Saturn is contraction. Okay. On one level, we might describe energetically the combination of Jupiter and Saturn as expansion and contraction, but that is mostly a oversimplification. We need to understand that these are gods and these are archetypal domains, and an entire archetypal dimension. Like, kind of think of like Jupiter Zeus is like an entire mandala of thoughts and shapes in the mind of the universe, and so is Saturn. And to simplify that entire mandala with a word like expansion is just not very helpful. Not only that, but it puts things in terms of a kind of energetic quality. And I think that there's something more personal and nuanced and multivalent going on than just a simple energetic word like expansion or contraction. Although those words belong to the mandalas of Jupiter and Saturn, they are just one little piece, right? So one of the ways you can think about Zeus is that all of us have a daily experience of belonging to a coherent world. Now, on the human level, our coherence is granted to us by the structure of the highways, the traffic system, the laws that hold the kind of interactions of a society together. Our sense that the world has order is given to us by on a certain level, the government and the organization of a neighborhood and the organization of civic and social groups. That's all Jupiter. But Jupiter is also very cosmic. For example, many of us require something like astrology, or perhaps Christianity or Buddhism or Islam, or whatever the case may be. We may need a religious group to help us see and feel our participation in reality as a reality that is coherent and meaningful. And so organizations that grant a kind of cosmic sense of unity are also very Jupiterian. We also, in a day-to-day way, need to feel as though there is coherence physically, like physiologically. And so the rhythms of life that we cultivate and develop, the lifestyle and the patterns of health, anything we do that is shaped by a kind of philosophy like, I know I need to feed myself, and I know I need to, feed myself healthy food. And I believe that healthy food is probably the more virtuous, noble choice than eating processed garbage. Do you know what I mean? These subtle philosophical values that we have that shape and grant health or coherence or well-being to life, in addition to a sense of order and goodness and truth on any level, whether it's just lifestyle and diet, or it's your deeper philosophical convictions. We need these things because they help us to orient ourselves. And all of that is part of the realm of Jupiter. So when we think about the cosmos itself being intelligible, ordered, not maybe in a way that we can completely make sense of, but we trust, we have some kind of faith that there is coherence, that there is meaning, that everything is unified somehow. That is all Jupiter. Now, Saturn, on the other hand, is fascinating because Saturn was the dimmest, most distant planet that sat at the edge of the known world, the world of the cosmos as we know and experience it, the manifest cosmos, and then the realm of the numinous that lay beyond, the realm of the gods or divinity, that transcendental place that is somehow here but beyond here. And Saturn sat as the gatekeeper between this world and that world. And so when there are places where we run into the limits of a system of order and coherence, we are at the threshold of Saturn. Because Saturn will tell us, for example, your system doesn't measure up to the ideal that exists in the mind of God or in the ideal archetypal realm. Your system is failing to live up to that divine ideal. Of course, this is why Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius. This is why it's also the ruler of Capricorn, insofar as we climb a mountain and aspire to build things that resemble perfection, that in the world, out of the material stuff, very Capricornian. Insofar as we look at the status of the world and measure it against an ideal that lies beyond where we currently are, very Aquarian. But both of those require some sense of measuring the world against an ideal. And that division between the world and the ideal is the boundary or gateway that is kept by Saturn. And so when Saturn and Jupiter come into contact with each other, it is as though the systems and structures in the material world are running up against how they fall short, how they fail, how they decline or die, because the world is impermanent. And all structures in this world that we make or create to resemble some kind of archetypal ideal have a lifespan. They come into being and they pass out of being. While there is always some inherent sense of cosmic unity, because this world is a reflection of the divine, they're not so polarized that one is bad and one is good. They're a reflection of each other. So this world will always continue to have some sense of perfect unity at play. It is a divine realm as well. But the structures and systems that we create, especially as humans, in order to resemble that archetypal ideal, will go through periods of contraction and failure and death and depletion, or they will be measured or revised or reviewed against an archetypal standard, something more, something new, something different. This is especially powerful when we have strong transits in the air that are very Saturnian. We've just had Pluto in Capricorn for 15, 16 years. Now we've got Pluto in Aquarius, right? So we have a powerful outer planetary emphasis on a Saturnian sign right now as well. But the point is that when Saturn comes into contact with Jupiter, it often marks a time of reflection and review, as well as dilapidation and kind of collapse and deterioration and decay and old age and death and mortality for the way that something has been. And for a new system to emerge, for a new order to emerge, for new institutions to emerge, for new paradigms or thoughts or beliefs to emerge, they have to run up against some kind of failure or some kind of new way of measuring what success looks like or what order and harmony looks like. I mean, think about it. We have gone through so many moments culturally, collectively, politically, governmentally, religiously, where institutions have to look for a new standard. And that standard evolves. Think about the way in which in the 1940s, for example, we had all of a sudden we had a surge in the rate of employed women in the workforce. And that started leading to enormous changes in terms of how systems and structures are shaped to be more equitable for, both men and women. And things continue to evolve like that, where systems or structures have to be revised and changed and shifted. The issue is that in the human world, there are competing ideas of what constitutes the new or better form, as well as what constitutes failure or collapse. You have people saying, well, this is unevolved and this is evolved. And you have other people saying just the opposite. No. That's unevolved and this is evolved, right? So it's also not as though there's just some perfect new system beaming down from above. It's that there's also paradigmatic competition around this point within ourselves and collectively, because different groups with different values, led perhaps by different unconscious patterning, not that any of us are perfectly conscious of why we're doing everything that we're doing, are suggesting new reforms, new revisions, new forms and structures, paradigms, thoughts, and beliefs that reshape what we call order. So that interaction between Jupiter and Saturn, first of all, is a mundane cycle that has a lot of relevance in mundane astrology, meaning the tracking of things historically, collectively, governmentally, nationally, etc. They have a lot of relevance when it comes to larger groups of people. Right away, it can be alienating to try and figure out what a Jupiter-Saturn cycle therefore means for an individual. However, it is just as important, just as relevant, and just as easy to track. It's not like we should think that because this is one of those transits that has had great historical significance and mundane significance, that we somehow have to track our own lives along the same collective lines, right? There can be great variance from person to person in terms of what these Jupiter-Saturn cycles have meant and looked like, given our own personal reforms and paradigmatic changes that we go through. So the other thing to remember is that when Jupiter contacts Saturn, Saturn can inspire Jupiter. It's not that's just that Saturn kind of kills Jupiter. It's that Saturn, when we run into the limits of something, it is often at the exact same time that we begin imagining something more or something better, right? Think about when you're 18 years old, you're first dating, right? And you get into a relationship with someone. And this happens for most of us. We go through some relationships before maybe we find a life partner or a long-term partner or what have you. And in that process, you get to a place with a person where you go, this has been really good. This has been really interesting. However, I'm realizing right at the time where the limitations of this relationship are becoming very apparent to me, I'm starting to see the image of a different kind of person that I think I would prefer to be with. And you don't know who that person is, but you just know that they're going to have a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that, or you're going to have a little bit more in common. You're really spiritual, they're not. You're going to need that, or whatever the case might be. That, in a sense, is a Jupiter-Saturn moment within a relationship, within your relationship history. And so you go, I've got to end this relationship because I'm getting inspired by a different kind of relationship that I'm realizing is possible given a different prioritization of values and choices and so forth. So we go through these kind of paradigmatic changes in every area of our lives, and you can track them along the cycles of Jupiter and Saturn. And in some ways, the Jupiter-Saturn cycle represent the broadest, most comprehensive sense of reviewing and revising values, needs, and structures in our life on mental, psychological levels, emotional levels, spiritual levels, philosophical levels. It can be about turning points within the things that we practice, the crafts that we study, the people or groups that we belong to. But what you'll see time and time again is that we start reaching a limit and we start imagining something beyond the limit. And that delineation is Saturn inflecting itself on Jupiter. Now, in this case, it's really interesting because, well, actually, I'll come back to that when we'll come back around to the current Jupiter-Saturn cycle. First, let's go back in time, and I'm going to give you some ideas for how to track the previous cycle. All right. First, let's get the chart up on the screen. So this is today, Wednesday, November 27th, and you can see that through Jupiter's retrograde, it's coming back into contact with Saturn. Now, this combination will perfect. We just go forward a little bit, and we'll see that the two planets come into that perfect arrangement here right about Christmas. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, it's the solstice time of year, and that's interesting because the last time that they came together was almost exactly 4 years ago on the solstice of 2020 in the sign of Aquarius. So anyway, we'll come back to that cycle, but here's what I want to do. Excuse me. We're going to go back in time to the beginning of the last cycle, and we're going to walk forward through it, and I'm going to give you some prompts. So here we go. So here is the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. The last one that took place in 2000, May of 2000, in the sign of Taurus. Now, I'm going to give you some journal tracking prompts right now, and I'm going to explain each one, and then we're going to walk through the cycle, and I want you to use all of these tracking prompts and tracking suggestions under each part of the cycle. And I promise you, believe me when I say this, take your time with it. I mean, if you've only got 15 minutes, fine. If you can take half an hour, if you can take an hour, it is worth it, I promise you. So anyway, here are the prompts, and we're going to start with this period in May of 2000. And remember this too, for every date that I give, think about that year, right? May of 2000, you could back this up a little bit, go into the fall of 99, into the spring of 2000. About a year within the time frame of the conjunction on either side is when you will typically see events and transitions that are reflecting the Jupiter-Saturn dynamic and the kinds of structural or paradigmatic changes that come with it. It doesn't usually happen on the day of, although it can happen in the month of or right around the exact conjunction. But think of these as moments that then get an umbrella created around them for about a year. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, here are the prompts, and I encourage you to spend time with each of them around each date. How were my beliefs, my attitudes, my perceptions, and my convictions changing? How were my beliefs, attitudes, perceptions, and convictions changing? So what I mean by this is what kinds of things were happening in your life that were shifting your attitudes, your outlooks, the things that you're passionate about, the things that you believed, whether it was the development of your faith or your outlook on life or your philosophy or your political participation or paradigmatic changes in any specific area of your life. I encourage you to not think too hard in the beginning about the house location, because sometimes that will, it can actually be misleading, because sometimes we then think I have to find something that looks like the house. And it's more important to just start with this level of things and then come back to the house location later. So you could look at the whole sign house of Taurus under this first one, for example, but I recommend looking at it after the fact and just starting with these basic questions. Number 2, how were systems or structures in any aspect of my life evolving or changing? And by systems or structures, I mean those systems of patterned meaning or arrangements or things that grant coherence and structure and a sense of unity to our life. What was changing structurally? Number 3, what beliefs were getting tested or refined? What were we in the process of doubting? What were we in the process of opening our minds or hearts to? Number 4, what was I in the process of building? What kinds of structures or systems or what of anything in my life was I in the process of building? In what way were groups, organizations, or other social elements of my life transforming? This becomes really important. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share with you one observation of my own from having done this prior to telling all of you to do it. So, and I'm not going to use the house locations in my own chart. I'm just going to tell you the very basic things. So at this time, I was, for the very first time under this conjunction, starting to question whether or not the Christian church was going to continue to be the best place for me, philosophically, personally, socially, on every level. That questioning process started right here. That is the broadest thing. I was pretty young, I was like 18, something like that. Okay. So you think about that period around 2000 and what was going on. All right, we're going to go forward now. You could pause the video, if you need to do this exercise like this. So now let's go forward and we're going to take them into their square. It's going to take a little while for them to get enough separation where they are square to one another. Now here we're starting to get here we go. Now we're cooking. So we're seeing that they are in the whole sign square with one another in 2005. Jupiter's going to need to station and turn direct. And then, let me go forward by weeks. That'll be a little quicker. All right. So Jupiter goes direct. Oh, you know what? It's going to be into the next sign, isn't it? Yep. So here we have the two planets reaching their square. Here it is. Okay, here we go. Let's get the exact day here. Yeah, so it is between December 16th and 17th of 2005. So you could back that up to earlier in 2005. You could put that forward a little bit into 2006. Because let's see if they come back. I believe they come back again in this one. Yeah, so they come back into a second square by July of 2006. So let's say late 2005 through summer of 2006, something like that. Okay, perfect. So during this time, how were my beliefs, attitudes, perceptions, and convictions changing? How were systems or structures in any aspect of my life changing or evolving? What beliefs were getting tested or refined? What was I in the process of building? In what way were groups, organizations, or other social elements of my life transforming? During this period of my life, I went to South America for the first time in 2005 and drank ayahuasca. That would then lead to a few more trips and the very rapid transformation of my spiritual outlook on life, which became much more universal and quickly went beyond let's call it the boundaries of the Christian church. And remember, that was what had started under the first part for me. So the ayahuasca experience, which I used as a way of also treating some opiate addiction that I was dealing with in my early 20s, came in and completely transformed my worldview. It didn't discard or discredit, the Christian upbringing that I kind of came from. In many ways, it honored it. But the ayahuasca experience also sort of universalized my understanding of my faith path. And that happened during this period. And during this period, I then started writing a book about it. So that's what I was building. Okay, so play with that timeline. This is, again, like late 2005. Like you could go through from like 2005 through 2006, right around in there. Now, let's go forward again. And now we're going to get to their opposition. And the opposition is often where things really go through a period of testing, because now it's as though there's a kind of duality at work and a kind of feeling of like a binary opposition that can make these particular exchanges tense and almost like a little bit more challenging to deal with. So here it is. Now this is, there's the opposition between Jupiter and Saturn in May of 2010. Jupiter's in Pisces, Saturn is in the sign of Virgo. This is May of 2010. Now, Jupiter's going to enter Aries, Saturn is going to enter Libra, and then we're going to get the retrogradation of Jupiter hitting Saturn again in August of 2010. Let's see. It comes about right about here. This is like mid to late August 2010. So 2010 becomes another really big year. Okay. So during that period of time, remember, how were my beliefs, attitudes, perceptions, and convictions changing? How were systems or structures in any aspect of my life evolving or changing? What beliefs were getting tested or refined? What was I in the process of building? In what ways were groups, organizations, or other social elements of my life transforming? So, interestingly, during this opposition period, in May, in fact, I left my job as a social worker, started managing a yoga studio, and taking an astrological certification course with my first teacher, Rebecca Gordon, who I just still dearly love. She's a good friend of mine still. And after I completed that program, the yoga studio was served an eviction notice. I was collecting unemployment, and I launched Nightlight Astrology. My book about ayahuasca came out, and I was officially beginning my career as an astrologer, building my practice and company. And during that period of time, my ongoing involvement in ayahuasca work and communities, which had been going on for many years at this point, was serving an incredibly important role in developing my involvement in yoga communities, in the astrological community. And now I was publishing a book about ayahuasca and launching my astrological business, all of which represented shifts in paradigm belief that were taking place under the earlier parts of the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. Okay, so that's it. That's what I'm saying. They're very powerful. Now, sometimes, for some of us, I was born, for example, with Jupiter conjunct Saturn. So my relationship with the Jupiter-Saturn cycle is quite pronounced, and that is often the case when you're born under hard aspects of the cycle. So if you're born with the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, square, or opposition, or even a trine or sextile, you may experience the cycle a little bit more vividly because those two planets are connected natally. So that's just a side note, but you can still, I promise you spend a little time with this and really take time with these questions, and you will find that it's remarkable the kinds of philosophical and structural changes that happen, like paradigmatic changes in our life, deep structural changes. All right, so that was the opposition. Now let's go forward to the final square. All right, we're moving forward here. All righty, so here is the approaching of the final square. Oh, I guess Jupiter's going to turn retrograde on us first. Get this forward a little bit, sorry. Here we go. All right, so we've got the first square in, here we go. This is August of 2015 that the first square comes through between Jupiter and Saturn in Leo and Scorpio. You can see that connection right there. Now let's take this forward a little bit. And let's see, it comes back through retrograde. Yeah, so here we have the two planets connecting again by March of 2016. So you can see the two planets taking place right here. So between 2015 and 16, again, let's return to those prompts. between 2015 and 16, just kind of give it a broad umbrella, because a lot of the times, I mean, this is March 2016, but you see there was some in the fall of 2015. So how were my beliefs, attitudes, perceptions, and convictions changing? How were systems or structures in any aspect of my life evolving or changing? What beliefs were getting tested or refined? What was I in the process of building? In what way were groups, organizations, or other social elements of my life transforming? So here's the deal. We have another period of time, a last quarter square now, where we see that kind of shift, a pronounced moment of the ongoing evolution of structures, beliefs, deep paradigms changing. So for me, what happened during this period of time between 2015 and 2016 was I got married and became a dad. That had a very deep impact on my life. And I also, during this time, began the process, which took about 2 years, but it began under this period of shifting from archetypal astrology to Hellenistic astrology, and began an immersive process of shifting my philosophical and technical approach to astrology, which completely transformed my career. And I began studying with Robert Schmidt, Chris Benin, Dimitri George, people who were the major disseminators of Hellenistic astrology and horary astrology as well. Began an apprenticeship of horary during this time, and completely transformed the curriculum of all of my programs. And also, we started to consider moving to all online offerings, because the yoga studio, alongside of being parents, was becoming a lot to manage. So those structures started changing then. Major shift in my outlook on life, becoming a parent, major shift in my practice of philosophical practice of astrology. So there it is. And you can track the same thing. Look for this time, late 2015 through 2016, what was going on? All right. Well, you can guess where this is heading. The next movement between these two planets comes at their conjunction. And their conjunction is something that, of course, took place in December of 2020. What were the philosophical changes that were happening in your life around this time? So, same prompts. How are my beliefs, attitudes, and perceptions changing? How were systems or structures in any aspect of my life evolving or changing? What beliefs were getting tested or refined? What was I in the process of building? In what way were groups, organizations, or other social elements of my life transforming? So we closed our yoga studio. This is my report. We closed our yoga studio. We moved back home to Minneapolis, which is where both my wife and I are from. Originally, we were living on the East Coast. So there were major structural and paradigmatic changes related to the prioritization of home and family, which had begun under the last part of the cycle of the last cycle. So we had moved home. We had moved all of our business online. I had developed now year 1, 2, and 3 curriculum in Hellenistic astrology that all launched that year. We started the plans for our donation-based clinic, right? I, at that point, began what would be about a year of coming to the conclusion that I needed to leave the religious yoga community that I was a part of. So major new beginning with respect to where we were living, how we were doing business, the types of programs I was offering, and a paradigmatic shift around religion and philosophy in my life with respect to the yoga community that I was in, that by the end of this period, after their Jupiter left Aquarius, I had then left the yoga community. Again, very powerful changes. So do you see why it's so important to track these? Because you'll see connected the arc of your life and how your paradigms of thought are changing, deep structures in your life that shift everything else. They take place under these aspects. You can track them out in the collective as well, within groups and organizations. All right, let's roll it forward, and here we are. Here we are. And we've already had, in August, the square between Jupiter and Saturn in Gemini and Pisces. So you can look at August of this year. And then again, here in December, we see the two coming back together. And then if we track them out a little bit further into June of 2025, we'll see Jupiter in Cancer squaring Saturn in Aries as the final square between them. They will not come back into that perfect square again. So we have between December and June, and as early as this previous August of 2024, to look at the structural shift that is taking place. Here's the hard thing, is that you barely ever recognize when you're in the midst of those periods how impactful the period will be and what a shift it will create overall in time. That's why it's important to track, because when you track the entirety of these big cycles, it becomes so much easier to see in the previous periods. Look at what I was in the mix of. I was in the soup, you know? And when I'm in the soup, it's harder to see how these entire attitudes and perceptions of reality are shifting. And so the structures and deep systems are going to shift slowly, gradually. Jupiter-Saturn this month may or may not have any immediate, obvious signs that it gives in a big event. But there may be important things that are happening that have an undeniable effect on your attitude and outlook in August. Now, well, for me, for example, one thing that's been happening that's just a very mundane example, August, we started building the donation-based clinic. We launched it late November as the square's coming back. That was something we established the framework for and decided to set as an intention in 2020 under the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. Continuing to try to shift the structure of the company to be something that continues evolving in the way that we try to make astrology accessible. That's a core vision of Nightlight. So that's one way it's related. Not surprisingly, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction happened in my 10th house, right? So the seeding moment for me in this cycle seems to have particular relevance to the trajectory of my career arc. When you look back at Taurus in the last cycle where it all started, that was my first house. The last cycle had so much more to do with identity and personal philosophy and beliefs and how they would end up shaping things like family and career and other things, right? But so much more personal and existential in the first house at the seeding point of the last cycle. This seeding is in the 10th house in my chart as a Taurus rising. So you can also track that out. You can track the start of the cycle in Aquarius. You can look at the whole sign houses now between Pisces and Gemini. But I promise you that if you're feeling overwhelmed by that and you start trying to fit things into the house meanings, don't do it. Just start with these basic questions and run through them one at a time, and you will find there it is. If I just look at it from that, if I look at it kind of from Jupiter, Saturn, apart from wherever they're located in my birth chart and trying to figure it out, like, you will see it if you just practice on this general level of questioning. Okay, well, I leave you there with some homework, and I hope that you will find this to be useful. I'm amazed at how in a thing that's been very important for me since the last cycle, since this cycle started, was the incorporation of more emphasis on physical health and well-being, my body. I've always been a very mental, intellectual, spiritual type of person. Didn't prioritize bodily health as much. I'm aging. Under the last conjunction, I also started getting into my health a lot more. What I find really interesting is that as this Jupiter-Saturn square has come through, there's also been a lot of shifting in my understanding and a lot of growth and learning within the paradigm. Kind of like a similar shift that I was talking about when I went from being archetypal, psychological alone to Hellenistic plus archetypal. That shift philosophically within my career, there's something like that that's been happening for me within the domain of my physical health and wellness practices. And that's been really cool because I just feel like I'm learning and I'm growing a lot in that respect. But you can find that it might be in relationships, it might be with parenting, it might be in your career or a craft you practice. It could be within groups that you belong to, or the way you intersect personally and socially. Like where those structures, it can really take place in so many different ways because so many of us are oriented in very specific areas of our life compared to others. Like, and we've tracked Ashley's cycles, and there's a lot of overlap for her between caregiving, nurturing, healing, and health profession as an herbalist and mothering. And the two have so much to do with each other. In the last cycle, mine is so philosophical, Anyway, it's a fun thing to track. I hope you will have fun with this. I hope you find this useful. Thank you to everybody again for supporting the channel so far. We have a long way to go to get to 1,937 backers, but we're off to a good start. If you haven't yet pitched in, after I sign off, there's going to be an explanation of the rewards that we offer when you donate, because we have a lot of really cool gifts and bundles on our courses that help you to save like up to 75% off, like really, really great deals when you support the channel and support the production of free content in 2025. So thank you to everybody, and we will see you again soon. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm going to tell you about the different rewards that we offer when you donate and support our channel in the year ahead. So you'll find a link to the Kickstarter in the description of this video, in the comments section of this video, as well as on our website, nightlightastrology.com. If you head over there, you'll see at the top of the page there is a menu item that says Kickstarter 2025. You can click on that and be taken over to the Kickstarter campaign page. So once you're there, if you scroll down on the right-hand side, you're going to see different pledge levels and different gifts and sales that we run as a way of saying thank you for your support. So among those, our most popular offering by far are the major discounts that we offer on our training programs. So if you are interested in studying astrology at Nightlight in 2025, whether you're a brand new student or a currently enrolled student who's thinking of taking one of our year 2, 3 horary programs, you're going to find that these are the best rates that we run on the entire year. And we do this as a way of both saying thank you and also of helping us raise funds to support the channel, our staff, and everything we do. So you'll see attend one Nightlight course there. That's about 50% off the total cost of the program and about $500 off the early bird rate. And then you'll scroll down and you'll see that if you bundle 2 courses together, the savings go way up. Bundle 3, they go up even more. I mean, the difference between the 2 and 3 class package is $200. So $200 more, you get 3 of our year-long programs. And if you get all the way to the 4 class pass, then you have all 4 years of our program. You can take them at any pace you like, renew them whenever you like. There's no timeline on when you use these class passes. And you will have all 4 years of content at about 75% off each of the programs individually when you get that bundle. So those are our best savings for sure. Highly recommend those. If you have any questions about our courses or programs, email us info@nightlightastrology.com or look at the website under the courses page. You'll find information about each of the individual courses we offer. And then if you scroll up, you're going to find some of our other programs that are greatly discounted. Ashley's Herbal Foundations apprenticeship course, which many people are interested in who come through our Moon Circle that Ashley and I lead each month. You scroll up, you're going to find our masterclass series for 2025, greatly discounted, as well as our Roots and Spheres Moon Circle, greatly discounted. There's hundreds of dollars of savings in each of those. So we really try to make sure that the Kickstarter acts as a good flash sale for all of our programs. You'll then find some really nice prices on previous archive talks, like our 2024 archive masterclass bundle, which is about 30 hours worth of content on specialized topics in astrology. You can see the topics listed in each of the bundles as you scroll through. 2023's masterclass bundle, huge savings on those and a lot of really great content. You'll see a few reading options as you continue to go from the bottom to the top. You'll see the 2025 year ahead mini reading. There's only 30 of these. These are individualized birth chart readings that I do, looking at the most significant transit in your birth chart for 2025. I record those personally. You'll then see that there is an Ask 3 Horary Questions option where you can get 3 horary questions to redeem whenever you'd like within the year ahead. Those are kind of yes, no predictive questions. Will I get the job? Will we get together? Things like that. Then you'll see the Astrology for Complete Beginners course is also discounted through the Kickstarter. This is a great 10 hours worth of content for people who are brand new to astrology. So whether that's you or maybe a gift for somebody else. And then you're going to see some individual master classes that are greatly discounted from the past year. So all of 2024's masterclass series are the archives of which 8 to 10 hours each are on sale. And then scroll up a little bit more and you'll see one of our most popular offerings, which are the year ahead horoscope readings. These year ahead horoscope readings include 30 to 45 minutes of a breakdown of all the major transits of the year ahead for each sun and rising signs. You get all of them with this package, which is a great deal. It's like 10 hours worth of content, 8, 9, 10 hours, somewhere in there. I haven't finished recording all of them yet. So as of the time I'm recording this, I'm anticipating it'll land around 10 hours. But yeah, anyway, so you scroll up,
You'll see those horoscope videos will all be delivered to you right around January 1st when the Kickstarter ends. Scroll up a little bit more, you'll find The Oracle Speaks, which is my book, and this is being released chapter by chapter. It is a book about the inner experience of learning to speak with oracles, and it is being released chapter by chapter in both text and audiobook form, so you can listen along to my new book. And that takes us up to the Astrology of 2025 video. This, for your donation at the $50 level, gives you an exclusive talk breaking down all of the major astrological transits of 2025. I look in depth at some of the biggest things happening in the year ahead and break them down in advance. And that's the only place I release that video or that take on the whole year ahead. Finally, at the very top, the most basic level of donation, you'll see the Astrology of 2025 calendar. This is a PDF calendar we design and make that allows you to track and move along with the astrology as the year unfolds. This is also great if you want to track what we're going to be talking about week by week on my channel. You'll get a glimpse at the biggest transits of each day and month and week. And that will give you some sense of where we're heading with our coverage of the astrology on the channel as the year unfolds. So again, any questions about any of the rewards that you see, email us info@nightlightastrology. Link is in the description, comments, or on the website, nightlightastrology.com. Help us get to 1,937 backers by January 1st. We deeply appreciate your contribution. We try to make sure we have some really special rewards to say thank you when you contribute. All right, take it easy. Bye.